Hey, this is Math Minutes Pro with Dr. Harrison. Today we will talk about how to name and find angle measures with two parallel lines and a transversal. So first I'd like to start with defining a few basic terms. Let's start with defining parallel lines. Parallel lines are nothing more than two lines that are not intersecting. Usually, sometimes you will see in some textbooks two double arrows on the lines, and that just communicates that these lines are parallel. So I'll go ahead and add this notation, okay? So that's our parallel lines. Now, your transversal refers to a line that intersects two parallel lines. These are your transversals right here, okay? All right. So we're going to begin by naming the angle pairs that we have in these four images right here, okay? So I'd like to start with, and before I go further, I just want to make mention, I'm going to use some vocabulary or terms. Complete definitions of all these terms are included in the description below, all right? So let's start here. Now notice that we have two angles. If you have two parallel lines that are intersected by a transversal, then these two angles we're looking at, they're corresponding angles, okay? We say that these corresponding angles are congruent. So I'm just going to write corresponding, use a little notation, angles, and I'm going to use the congruent symbol, are congruent. All right? Okay, let's go over here now to another case where we have two parallel lines intersected by a transversal. Now, the name of this angle pair is called alternate exterior. We call them alternate because these two angles are on opposite sides of the transversal, alternate, and exterior because they are exterior angles with respect to the transversal. Okay? So, when you have two parallel lines formed by, crossed by a transversal, and they form alternate interior angles, we're going to say these alternate interior angles are also congruent. Sometimes we can also say equal, but alternate interior angles, I'll use that notation, are congruent, okay? We can also say or equal. All right, now let's go over here. We have two parallel lines intersected by a transversal. If two parallel lines are intersected by a transversal, they form what we call alternate interior angles. Here we had alternate exterior, but now these are alternate interior angles. When you have this situation, the alternate interior angles are equal or congruent. So I'm just going to write these are alternate interior angles, and in this case we'll say are congruent or equal, and I'll just do that over here just to be consistent. All right, we're naming the angle pairs. Remember, here we have again two parallel lines intersected by a transversal. If two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, we are looking at this angle pair. This angle pair is called same side interior angles because they're on the same side of the transversal and they're in the interior. position, okay? So if you have two parallel lines cut by a transversal, we say that same side interior angles are supplementary. So we're going to write that. Same side interior angles are supplementary. That's a new term, and I'm going to take some time to explain what supplementary means. Okay, so we have successfully named the angle pairs. In this case, we have corresponding angles. When corresponding angles are formed by a pair of parallel lines intersected by a transversal, those corresponding angles are congruent or equal. In this case, we have alternate interior angles. If you have two parallel lines cut by a transversal, alternate interior angles are congruent or equal. If you have two parallel lines cut by a transversal, alternate interior angles are congruent or equal. And if you have two parallel lines cut by a transversal, same side interior angles are supplementary. So we're going to get into a little more vocabulary. Since we're dealing with angle pairs, these are not the only type of angle pairs. I'm going to define a few more. So first, let's start with vertical angles. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and write that down. Vertical angles. All right, so if I have two intersecting lines like this, we say that vertical angles are equal. Okay, so vertical, in this case, vertical angles are equal. All right, and then I want to deal with another concept where we deal with, let's see, corresponding or complementary angles. Okay, so let me go ahead and write that down. Complementary angles. Complementary angles are two angles that add up to equal 90 degrees. All right, so it's an angle pair. And let's say that this is a 90-degree angle because I put a box there. All right, and then I draw a ray right here. Okay, and let's say this angle right here is 60 degrees. This angle is 30 degrees. This would be an example of complementary angles where two angles add up to equal 90 degrees. Okay? We're still dealing with the topic of angle pairs, and I'd like to have one more where we call them a linear pair or supplementary angles. So I'm going to write that up here. We have a linear pair, or I'm going to write this slant, supplementary angles. I'm going to put or, okay? Linear pair. So in this case, that's where we have, we write a straight line or straight angle, and then draw a ray right here, okay? And let's say this angle is 120 degrees, and this angle is 60 degrees. So this is a linear pair. And the reason is because you have two angles that form a straight line. That's why we call it a linear pair. But we also refer to this as supplementary angles because these two angles add up to equal 180 degrees. Okay? So going back to same side interior, when we say same side interior angles are supplementary, we mean that these two angles add up to equal 180 degrees. Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and clean the board, and we're going to go ahead and get into some problem solving here. So let me go ahead and take that off. Wipe this board down. Excellent. Got a nice clean board here. Now, here is the case where we're going to apply those concepts that we just discussed. And in this case, what we're going to do now is find the angle measures, all right, where we have two parallel lines cut by a transversal. See those two symbols right there? That implies that the two lines are parallel. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to find x, all right? And then the second thing we're going to do is we're going to find the measure of each angle. Find each angle measure. All right? So, again, the angles we're referring to, this is one angle measure, and that's the second angle measure. So, let's first start off with step number one. We're going to go ahead and find x. So I'm going to write that as step number one. Okay? So we're going to find what x equals. Now, remember, this is a case of same side interior angles. And what we know is that same side interior angles are supplementary there, right? That means they add up to equal 180 degrees. You're right. Excellent. So let's go ahead. When you do this, is a geometry type problem. We're going to take this picture and convert it into an equation based on what we understand about what we're looking at. We understand that this is an angle pair that is same side interior, supplementary. So we're going to write that as an equation. X plus 109 plus x plus 89 equals 180. We wrote an equation based on what we understand about this picture. Now here comes the algebra. First thing I want to do is group like terms. So I'm going to identify my like terms. All right, like terms, all right, have the same variable. If you're dealing with a variable with the exponent as 1, that exponent is 1, even though it's not there, okay? And then when you're dealing with numbers, of course, those terms are like. Now let's group those terms. X plus 109 plus 89 equals 180 degrees, okay? I'll go ahead and put that degree symbol. All right, now let's go ahead and combine those like terms. Okay, so we have 2 times x plus 109 plus 89, that gives us 198 equals 180 degrees. Now we're going to get into inverse operations. The opposite of adding 198 is to subtract 198. So minus 198, whatever you do to one side of the equation, you got to do to the other. Minus 198. I love this problem because it combines both geometry and algebra. Draw our line here. Of course, that crosses out. Go back to the left. Bring down 2 times x. Bring down the equal sign. Now, 180 minus 198, that gives us negative 18. Okay, so I'm going to write 2 times x equals negative 18 again so that I can make this next step explicit. The opposite of multiplying by 2 is to divide by 2, so we're going to use division property of equality. We're going to divide both sides of the equation by 2. We get x equals negative 18 divided by 2, which is negative 9. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. This is a multi-step problem. A lot of times teachers want you to show that you know what the answer is. So in this case, we have found the value of x. Great. Now let's find each angle measure. All right, so I'm going to draw a line so that I can make a distinction for step number 2. Step number 2, we're going to find each angle measure. Each angle measure, we have 2 angle measures there. So this is step number 2. So I'm going to take this expression over here, bring it over there, x plus 109, all right? Say equals that, all right? Now I'm going to substitute negative 9 for x and rewrite it again. So I have set that as equals negative 9 for x plus 109. Negative 9 plus a positive 109 gives us 100. 100 what? 100 degrees. Okay, we're a third of the way there. We have found one angle measure, 100 degrees. That is referring to this angle, x plus 109. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and draw an arrow and just say right here, this is 100 degrees. We're doing great. I want to separate this. We're still in step 2, but now we're going to find the second angle measure. So I'm going to bring that expression over here, x plus 89. Now remember, x is negative 9, so we're going to substitute negative 9 for x. So then I'm going to write negative 9 plus 89. Okay, when you go ahead and add those numbers, we get a final answer of 80. But 80 what? You're right, 80 degrees. So we have successfully found the second angle measure, 80 degrees. I'm going to go over here and write this angle is 80 degrees. So what have we done? We found the value of x here in step 1. Okay. All right. Just going over a few things. We found the value of x in step 1, adding those 2 expressions, setting them equal to 180 degrees. X equals negative 9. Step 2, we found each angle measure, bringing each expression over here, substituting the value of x with negative 9. One angle measure is 100 degrees. Brought that second expression over here, substitute negative 9 for x. The second angle measure is 80 degrees. So thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to check out my Patreon page in my video description below. On my Patreon page, you can get access to exclusive math lessons, study tips, live Q&A, and more. See you next time.